The Midnight Hauntings.
Good day, Midnight folks. I'm Rex. This story was sent in by one of our listeners, and it's about a woman that was taken as a laundrywoman for a mysterious family, where its washed clothes are always soaked in blood. I'm Susan, and I have been working as a laundress for several years. I started in the province, but I immediately moved to Manila after my horrifying experience. My story began when a rich family took me in our town. Their family house is big, but almost no one lives here because there are no assistants since the death of the head of the family. Being mysterious has become the talk of the town. The mother left behind who lives here. Mrs. Gemma is the widowed who lives here, and it looks strict and grumpy. She strictly orders me, I will only do laundry outside and she will just hand the clothes to me. I thought at first, she is the only person, but I was surprised when someone peeked inside. Her daughter Anna is thin as if sick. I think the girl was so pitiful because her rude mother might be humiliating her. Mrs. Gemma immediately asked Anna to enter, and I was surprised when she reached for the dirty clothes. It's soaked in blood, the clothes I supposed to wash. Mrs. Gemma noticed the fear on my face, and she immediately explained that she was butchering a pig. It's the only business that her husband left her. It's butchering. I was terrified because it was the first time I saw that much blood in clothes. I believed what Mrs. Gemma said and continued to do laundry. After that day, Mrs. Gemma has been hiring me for weeks. My parents have always tells me not to stay up late because of the news that there are many girls that went missing in our town every night. Fortunately, I do the laundry every morning at Mrs. Gemma's house. A few months passed. I got used with the amount of clothes that Mrs. Gemma asks me to wash, and no longer surprised to the clothes with the layers of blood on it. But one day, everything has changed, because when I got there, Mrs. Gemma seems to be in a hurry. She immediately let me inside the gate, and she said she still has clothes to be added. I did laundry first, until I noticed that the soap that she gave me was missing. Maybe in her hurry, she didn't notice. So I thought of knocking on her inside. But I noticed that the door was slightly open, and I saw that Mrs. Gemma was busy. I could hear the sound of her slaughtering, and thought that maybe she would add the clothes she was wearing. When I approached the door, I trembled with fear because of what I saw. Mrs. Gemma was butchering human body parts. Hands and legs was scattered on her table, and blood spatter overflowed her clothes. I almost threw up in disgust, and I slowly retreated so that she won't caught me. That's when I thought, that's why I don't hear any pigs in them either. I was nervous because I noticed I haven't seen Anna in weeks, and maybe she was slaughtered by Mrs. Gemma. I also thought that maybe Anna is not Het real daughter. I immediately called the authorities to report it, because I was also afraid that it might be Mrs. Gemma who catches the missing girls. and maybe she's just dressing them up as Anna. The police stormed their house, and they found no evidence. One night, I was shaking with fear, because Mrs. Gemma might know that I called the authorities. According to the authorities, Anna is safe, and they said they didn't find a human body. Because of my concern, I thought of going to see Anna. I'm worried they might have seen another child, because I didn't show them any photos. That's when I thought to enter their house at night, to make sure she is in good condition. When I went there, I saw Mrs. Gemma again butchering. I slowly passed what Mrs. Gemma was doing, and resisted fear. When I noticed, it seems that the meat on her desk is human flesh again. I heard a child crying, and I immediately peeked into Anna's room. She's tied to the chain and trying to escape. I was about to open the door, seeing her face transformed into a monster. I stopped myself from screaming, and immediately hid, hearing the steps of Mrs. Gemma. She's carrying the human flesh, and this is what she feeds to Anna. That's when I realized that's why Mrs. Gemma kills people, is to feed her monster daughter. I stopped when Anna suddenly broke free from her chains. Anna jumped on top of her mother, and she devoured it mercilessly. Mrs. Gemma was just lying on the floor, and its blood kept leaking. In my fear, I immediately hurried out of the house, and immediately ran home. I was in a hurry to get away from them, because I thought Mrs. Gemma helped her, so that the monster would not be released in our town. But now Anna has escaped, and we don't know. How can we stop her killings? I immediately left that town with my family. Since then, I have become selective to the families I work with, because I'm not sure if I would go to a monster's, because I have no chance with them, as I am just a laundry woman.